Hello again. So today, some key nutritional mistakes and misconceptions that are out there. So 6 key things that we really want to focus on. And so by the end of this highly informative podcast, you should be able to apply all these principles to your own practices and perhaps stop yourself falling into these pitfalls that many people do tend to fall into. So g'day, my name is Simon from the Deep South Experiment podcast, and I have a degree in the subject and about 20 plus years of experience in it as well. And I'm generally doing this podcast because I'm quite frustrated with all the information that's out there, or maybe the lack of it, or the contradictory nature of it. And so I'm just trying to do something about it. And I love talking about these subjects as well. So that is a massive reason as to why I'm here giving you this information today and going forward. And I'd really appreciate it if you would help the channel to grow by subscribing. It is information on fat loss, muscle building, strength training, the nutrition involved, and most importantly, perhaps the mindset of all of this to make it possible in the first place. So to get more content along those lines, please subscribe and help the channel. Thank you very much. So one of the first things are nutritional expectations. This has been a huge part for me over many years talking to many different people, is the expectations that people have generally tend to be way off what they can actually expect to happen. Now I do think this is in part to many false expectations that are being promoted. Many different supplement companies, gym equipment, there's a whole host of different brands, companies out there that all want you to buy into their products, and I do feel as though what you can achieve by buying different products or subscribing to different services or information sources, whatever it might be, generally they tend to have expectations that you can achieve far more than what you can. A bit sad perhaps, because we all want to get to where we want to go as fast as we can. But the reality is that our bodies, our minds, our physical ability to actually get to that stage only happens at a certain rate, and that needs to be quite clear. And so your job is really quite simple. All of our jobs are very simple in this respect. Get a firm understanding of what is actually possible. Make sure those expectations you have are realistic and are based in some form of truth rather than marketing. Then put those into motion. It's actually quite exciting once you realize exactly what you can achieve to then go at it and put it into motion. I've always found that to be quite an exciting experience. Maybe others might find it daunting, annoying, hard work, whatever, but I certainly relish that opportunity to go at those gains and achieve them. Then you need to be consistent. That's a huge part of all of this, is once you've started, good, absolutely brilliant mental place to be in. You've made that starting point, made the transition from the couch to the gym, as some might say. Now what are you going to do? Are you going to give it a couple of days, couple of weeks, or are you going to make this a commitment until you start getting your results? And so when we come to that understanding of those expectations, the muscle building side of things is a huge subject, fascinating subject. It's one that I absolutely adore. Not everyone does, of course. I certainly do. You being here now, you may well adore it as well, or at least have a huge degree of interest in it. But muscle building, it comes down to stimulating the muscles first, progressive overload in the gym or wherever it is that you're exercising, whatever it is that you're doing to exercise, but getting the muscles to send those signals that growth needs to occur because of the stimulation that you've just created. And then once you've stimulated, you then need to eat. So nutrition then becomes a huge part of it, and to make sure that you are eating correctly in order to support that muscle growth from occurring. And once you've done that, go and do it again. It's repeating it over and over again, making sure that you're being consistent in doing so. You don't just work out once a week, this week, maybe twice a week next week, It's every week you keep to a plan and you just keep at it. Stimulate, eat, and repeat. And there are a number of expectations, nutritional expectations around fat burning as well. I don't refer to it as weight loss because weight can be any number of things. I'm focusing, especially on this channel, on fat loss because that's what we want to have less of. That's what we want to burn. And nutrition plays a hugely important role in this. And the expectations are that fat does not simply get stripped off. An excessive amount of weight does not simply get burnt as body fat in some big furnace like Guy Fawkes night. It is just not something that happens. It is burnt very, very slowly, and it is burnt over time. And the key point to this, the key expectation to really understand, is that you have a job of appropriately encouraging the body to burn fat. You can't demand it, you must encourage it by eating appropriately to say it is okay to burn fat. You don't need to hold on to it because I am feeding you at appropriate times. I'm not restricting you so badly that you feel insecure about surrendering, if you like, this fat. You must encourage it to let it go quite freely, quite happily, and then it will continue to do so for as long as you need it to keep doing so. And I guess patience is a huge part of it. Is that one of the hardest things to do is to start a nutritional approach that targets fat loss, and then because you want it straight away, or perhaps you've been doing yo-yo dieting for the past goodness knows how long, and so you naturally want to see a repeat performance of that weight loss just disappearing. Not going to happen with fat loss, so you just have to have that mindset of really being patient and allowing it to occur very slowly and over a long period of time. So one of the biggest mistakes nutritionally in fat loss and in muscle building is the speed in which you want something to happen. You must be patient. The second area for me is that a lot of people tend to embark on some sort of fat loss and or muscle building journey without the appropriate knowledge. They probably hear it's quite simple. You exercise more and you eat less. There you go. Done. What's all the drama about, right? And if that was true, everyone that even bothered to try would succeed, because that's exactly what they're doing, right? They cut the number of calories, they hit the gym or the streets and do a jog or whatever it might be, but they don't succeed. And there's a good reason for that. It's because it's a complex subject, and this whole thing of muscle building and fat loss is a science, one that you at least have to have a really basic understanding of, especially the fundamentals. One of the key things with the muscle building side of things is I know that many people tend to eat far more than they need to, and tend to put quite a concentration on protein consumption. Both are important, but the amounts that you need are pretty key. Sometimes it's an excuse. They just go out and they have takeouts, they have lavish meals out. When I say lavish, I mean the number of calories that they're eating, and they really go for it. Off season, I am, they say, or I'm going to be cutting in a couple of months' time, so I'm using this time to now really bulk up. The amount that you need to bulk is often far less than what people decide to consume, which makes it harder to then burn later on. It's a really, really key thing to think about is the quantity, and it's a key mistake that a lot of people make. They need to be here, but then they are way up here. So then the coming down and the cutting, the mental aspect, the hormonal aspect, all becomes a bit of a struggle, and it's a real mistake that needs to be avoided in the first place. And we all know there's only one place all those extra calories, even from protein, are going to be stored. And it's probably not on your right ankle, which would just be a pain to get your sock on. It's probably places that you don't want it to be, first and foremost, which is normally around the waist area. That's just an annoying fact of life for a lot of people. Not everyone, because there are some annoying people who can just eat as much as they want and it doesn't really matter. But then they find it hard to gain muscle. So there's a balance involved here. If you are able to put muscle on quickly, then the chances are you're probably able to put fat on quickly too. So even more to the point, this rule or this mistake is really key not to make. That rhymes, isn't it? So kind of going back to the previous point, protein supports muscle growth. It does not cause it. You can shovel it all down your mouth and you won't start becoming muscular. You need to go and stimulate the muscle growth first, then support it with your eating. So protein doesn't cause it, it supports it. So again, don't force feed the muscle, just support it. And going back to the fat loss aspect, encourage fat loss with supportive, sensible nutrition. Don't demand fat loss, because your body will just say nope, and it won't burn body fat. If you encourage it as you need to, then it will gladly just give you a little bit at a time. Here you go, here's a pound this week, here's another pound the week after. Take it nice and slow. But as soon as you start wanting, pounds and kilos off by the day or by the week, the answer is no. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Love that phrase. And just a word on the nutritional supplement side of things. Big subject once again, but for the purpose of this particular episode, just a bit of knowledge for you on that respect. The mistake is that I wouldn't go and eat every supplement under the sun. Don't make sure that your cupboard is full, then you can go ahead and achieve your goals. Protein supplementation is great. It's a great convenience for if you can't get it in through the foods that you normally eat or the time that you have in a day to produce all these meals, whatever else. If you want to chug down a protein shake, great, do it. It doesn't matter. And it's just something that helps you get to where you need to go. I wouldn't replace whole foods with protein shakes, but there's a supplement for a reason. It does exactly that. Supplements the nutritional needs that you have throughout the day in order to meet the goals that you have and are striving for. And the third nutritional mistake or misconception is all around protein intake. Isn't this a massive area to get into? Again, wildly exciting, or so I say. Maybe some of you agree. Drop a comment below if you think it's fascinating, and that's why you listen to this podcast. But protein intake is how much do you go for? I'm sure you've heard all the advice everywhere you look. How many grams per pound of body weight to consume, or per kilo of body weight to consume? It always gets me why we all have all these measurements. But anyway, I tend to go by a pound all the time because it's the smallest unit, and therefore it makes the most sense to explain things by. And in my head, it just makes more sense to calculate things and so on. Whereas a kilo is 2.2 pounds. So why convert everything by thinking about something and then timesing it or dividing it by 2.2? So I just start off with the smallest measurement, just so that you know. I generally find 1 gram per pound of body weight is a great starting point. We all have to have a starting point, and then we evolve from that point on. You track what you're doing, find out what is the story with your own body and how you are reacting, what your hunger levels are like, what your recovery is like, what your growth is like. But that starting point is a reasonable starting point for me. And it's a round number 2. It's not 0.6 or 0.8, point blah, blah, blah. It's just 1. And it's not an excessive amount either. So that is a good starting point for a lot of people to start with. But I hear you're all shouting loud, I'm obese, or I'm exceptionally heavy. Perhaps you're 300 pounds or more. You're maybe used to eating smaller meals. You have been doing so because you're trying to lose weight or lose body fat. So a pound, or a gram, per pound, is going to be a lot of protein. And in that situation, completely understand. It's a lot to eat. It's an excessive amount, probably pretty expensive as well. So if you are a really heavy person, then I would suggest you lowering that amount. It won't be 1 gram per pound. Again, pick a starting point, one that you know you're going to be able to stick to. And then just the same as I advised before on 1 gram per pound, start off with whatever it might be, like 0.4 grams per pound. And then stick with that, see the results. Are you incredibly hungry? Can you not recover? Is it good? Is it healthy in a day? Can you manage it? Does it coincide with your lifestyle? And if the answers are all, yes, it's manageable, then stick with that and then increase or decrease as appropriate. Because the other thing to consider when looking at how much protein, you can't necessarily say, I'm going to eat in 1 gram per pound of body weight. Because when you're putting your food diary together, you will find that if you are a couple of grams short and you add in a certain food, you will add in extra calories because of the food, and your protein will surpass the amount that you want. Or the other way around, is that you have to take a food away because you're eating too many calories, and in doing so your protein levels will dip a wee bit below what you plan them to be. So there'll be that constant juggle. So don't get too into the weeds about this. The common mistake is precision. Just aim for a certain number and then be there or thereabouts. And I just thought it would be good to mention the supplementation again. If you're planning your dietary protein out and you've got all this food, all these meals per day, and you think, I've got all these commitments, I definitely can't take a full meal to a meeting with me, then protein supplementation is a great way to just simply pop outside, chug down some protein, and then get back to it again. So on to another one, meal frequency. What a diabolically complicated subject, or is it? Quite simple in my view, and there are a different range of opinions out there, which I would fully expect, and there should be too, because discussion about these things can only be healthy, just like a chicken breast. I feel that recently there's been more and more conversation about intermittent fasting, so where we have longer periods between meals, and then those meals themselves tend to be larger. And then there are the grazers among us. I'm one of those. I tend to advocate for it, do it myself, to have far more meals throughout the day, containing a smaller number of calories and nutrients, etc., and they are spaced together fairly close to one another. So 5, 6, 7 meals throughout the day. I do tend to find that eating more throughout the day gives somewhat of a mental boost. When you're feeling a bit, you just know that in half an hour's time you're going to eat, and it's a wonderful feeling. And then when you first pick up your fork or whatever you choose to eat with, then again, it's a wonderful feeling. And then when you finish your meal, you tend to think, but don't worry, because in 2 or 3 hours' time, I'll have another one. And so it keeps me going throughout the day, because I absolutely love to eat. And one of the reasons why is it tends to control my hunger. It's a mental boost, and I know that in a couple of hours' time, that hunger that I'm feeling will be gone, because after every meal I feel pretty good. Especially because I know that in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I'm going to feel pretty good again. So all day I'm feeling pretty good, much like Larry David for the Curb Your Enthusiasm fans. And one of the things that I love about the meals being as they are for me, regularity throughout the day, is that I'm going between anabolic and catabolic states. And the steady supply of nutrients is pretty important for me. It's the anabolic versus catabolic will never remain in one for long periods of time. It's always going to be alternating between the two. Fasting during your sleep, or whether you choose to do it during the day, is you're going to be likely in a catabolic state for a longer period of time. In that state, you break down things. Things such as muscle or body fat. Ideally body fat, not muscle, because we want to build muscle or at least maintain it. And so when you are in a catabolic state for a longer period of time, there is more danger of your body going for muscle mass rather than fat. When you're in an anabolic state, that is the opposite. That is the building of muscle or even the storage of fat. So when I'm alternating, or when anyone is alternating between anabolic and catabolic, that is a good thing, and it's going to happen naturally anyway. But we have control over how long we think we're going to be in one or the other. The more frequently you eat meals, the more likely you are to be anabolic. The longer you're fasting for, the more likely you are to be catabolic. It's not that one's ideal and one is not, but again, going back to the knowledge, just appreciating what happens in those two states and what choices can be made, i.e. during catabolism, is it body fat or is it muscle that's going to be targeted? That's a pretty key area to really understand. So meal frequency can be a mistake sometimes because people don't have the knowledge of what is actually going on as a result of eating the way that you do, and that's a key part to understand. But ultimately, none of this matters if you can't fit this in with your lifestyle. If you can't be consistent and you can't give yourself the best chance of getting to your goals, don't bother. Just do whatever you need to do. But if you're going to have to eat 2-3 meals a day for your lifestyle for you to be consistent, do that. If you're able to eat more meals throughout the day, then do that. I'm always an advocate of that. But always do what you are capable of doing and what you can stick with, not what you think you should be doing and therefore battling through it every single day in order to do it. Because there probably isn't that much benefit of that approach. You're far more beneficial to be doing what you are able to do and stick with. And meal structure. Another one, not too dissimilar from frequency, but it is a mistake that's made. It's the knowledge component. It's what people tend to try to have their meals consisted of. That's a big component to have a look at. I've heard it many times before, don't eat for the sake of eating. Sometimes you've got to eat because you need to provide the nutrients. You might have a goal in mind that dictates that. It might just be a mental boost that you need. It might be the placebo effect. Who knows? But if you need to do what you need to do, then do it. Don't be put off by people telling you you shouldn't eat unless you're hungry. But you just simply need to do what you need to do, whether you're hungry or you're not. And then the whole mentality of just grabbing something, this is one that I can't understand, where people may be out during lunchtime. And I've posed the questions to many times, what are you having for lunch today? And the answer is, I don't know, I'm just going to go grab something. And I'm like, aren't you on a diet? Basically trying to make nutritional choices that are sensible. And the answer is yes. But those two simply don't go hand in hand. Try not to grab something. It's a huge mistake. Try to always have it planned out. You might plan to buy something, or you might already have your food planned out and have brought it with you. That's what I always do. And focusing on one macronutrient, that it's admirable because you're obviously recognizing that there's a need for this focus. But don't just focus on one. Try to focus on your food as a whole. Calories and protein as your starting point. And ask yourself why you're eating. Just because you're filling in time? Or because someone told you how you need to eat? Or have you got a purpose for eating? And I feel this purpose is important because when you're eating throughout the day, you've got to feel motivated to do so. Not just in putting the food into your mouth, but knowing what's coming next, knowing what's coming tomorrow, knowing that you're prepared for what's coming tomorrow or the day after. Or if you're traveling soon, how are you going to deal with that? If you don't have a purpose, then the planning aspect is really quite difficult. So those purposes for me are quite simple. is that I supply nutrients to my body. That is first and foremost. I need to do that to encourage fat loss, and I need to do that to support the muscle growth that I have just been stimulating. Simple as that, really. And then on that point, I'm going to go between anabolic and catabolic. So I'm going to switch between those two different hormonal environments in my body all the time, and I like to know which one I'm likely to be in throughout the day. And I know that because of the knowledge that I have and experience of having done so for so many years and how I'm feeling. And I know that when my body gets to a certain stage, I'm likely to be in this particular state or I'm not. And that gives me then motivation. If I think I'm probably burning fat now for these particular reasons because I'm feeling this way, then I'm pretty motivated to do the same again in a few hours or a few days or months that follow. And that gives me such a mental boost as well, is that every single day I'm keeping to it and I'm getting these results, and it's a fantastic feeling. Not to mention that in 2 or 3 hours time, I'm going to get to do it again. The hormonal control that I feel that I have over my own body, or that nutrition will give anyone over their own body if they understand something, do it for a while, get to know the feelings that you're feeling, and then you pretty much know what's going on, or at least how to provoke that feeling again later on. To have that knowledge and that control is great. Not to have it and not to have that structure of nutrition, big mistake in my view. And the last word on this is it's a great approach to treat your food as an opportunity to get another step further to the goal that you have, whether it's fat loss, muscle building, or a bit of both. Then every time you eat a meal or think about preparing for a meal, that is another opportunity to get closer to where you want to be. Not everyone has this opportunity through various restrictions, be it time, financial, mental clarity, whatever it might be. But if you find yourself in a position to be able to prepare your meals and to enjoy them, of course, nothing like a chicken breast, then it's a great opportunity for you, and really relish that. And I have to add complexity to the list as well. Yes, nutrition and exercise and so forth, and the mindset as well, is a really complicated subject. It's a science. There's a lot of nuances in this. And the more familiar you get with that, the better. But not everyone is. Not everyone is really dedicated to this. They just have a goal as their life goes on. Well, for some people, this is their life. Whichever category you fall into, if you master the fundamentals, or at least make a change, or a couple of changes, and really stick to those, that consistency will have you see changes, and you will reach your goals to a certain extent, if not entirely, depending on what they are. You don't need to know all the ins and outs and every piece of complex information in order to achieve your goals. If you really want to reach certain heights and your goals are really quite dramatic or extreme, then fine. Yes, that complexity is necessary. But in order to just get a simple goal, for example, you want to drop 10 pounds, then you don't need to have a whole lot of complexity in there. You just need to understand some basic things and make some simple changes and be consistent. That is the simple key thing to do. So I think that the last thing on that would be just to simply get into the weeds a little later on. Master the fundamentals today or tomorrow, or over the next week or two. Then as you go on and you become familiar with how you work yourself, how it all fits into your lifestyle, the comments that you've got to bash off from those close to you, once you've got all that figured out, then the weeds become apparent, just like they start to grow in summer. And that's when you can get into those weeds and start figuring out something more complicated, increasing your knowledge and getting stuck into it if it is of that much interest to you later on. So just to recap then, those 6 points that I've been through that are really quite important I find, and that are some of the most common mistakes that you can make, then really target those and think about them, get some knowledge on them, and then move forward with them with consistency. And where would you be if I didn't summarize everything for you? After all the potential waffle that you've just listened to, if you're still here, let's just put it all together into a nutshell so we can progress forward and get those goals that we're looking for. First thing is nail those expectations. Really become very, very clear on what you are able to do, be it how the body works, the lifestyle that you've got to fit into, your family, your friend commitments, etc. What can you actually achieve? Be clear on that, and make sure that once you're clear on it, you are prepared to be consistent in doing it. That's really how you set yourself up to succeed. And follow an approach that you really have confidence in. If you're thinking, oh, is this appropriate? Can I do it? Is it right for me? The nutrition, the exercise commitment, if any of that's off, or if you don't believe in what you're doing or the person that has planned this for you, then this goes back to the consistency. You're probably unlikely to be consistent in doing it because you don't have that confidence. So make sure that part of your setup is something that you are sure is going to bring you those results, and then away you go. And make a decision on protein intake. Just think about it. What am I going to aim for if I'm a normal weight, if you're a heavy weight? And then when you're putting it together, just be there or thereabouts. Make a decision, stick with it, and then revise over time. Don't be concerned about getting it spot on today. And the whole meal thing that we were talking about. Make sure that you do something that is realistic and practical for you, and then again, be consistent with it. And in closing, once you've decided on what you're doing, keep it simple, and then away you go. Enjoy your progress, and then revise it later on, and then enjoy more progress. But at every step, try to keep it as simple as you can, and then you won't get bogged down with the concern of, am I confident in this? Am I doing it exactly right? And then you won't have the question of consistency. Make a couple of changes, be confident that they're right, be consistent with that, and away you go. Small steps at a time, small goals at a time. And then the last thing to do is subscribe to this channel, because I'll bring you more information just like this, and everyone will be happy, especially me. Catch you later.